As a designer that's been doing this for a while, if you don't update yourself, you might be left behind it. At one point, it basically became this like personal mission to really reestablish what design and just like updating the workflows that I think they're really dated today was sort of like the seed for me to start working on Magicpath. That's always been my sort of like mantra is like, how do we take a technology that is really complicated, but then kind of like package it in a way that people understand? That to me is like the interesting thing for founders to understand. It's like, you just don't launch the product. Like you have to kind of build this credibility and personality around like what are the things that you do well.
It's hard not to overhype today's guest. His name is Pietro Schirano, and he's one of my favorite AI builders in the design space. He's led AI and design teams for Brex, Uber, Facebook. He worked at Anthropic for 10 months, helping them build things like Claude Code. And he even runs a startup called EverArt that does just shy of $1 million a year revenue with a team of 3 people. But that's not the exciting part. A few months ago, Pietro tweeted out that you didn't even need to use Figma anymore. It went viral, people lost their minds, and he said, you know what, let me prove my point. So 3 months ago, Pietro and a team of 2 started building Magicpath. They just publicly launched it last week, fresh off of a $6.6 million fundraise from Kozla Ventures. Magicpath is my favorite AI design tool. It's an infinite canvas, but each artboard is an interactive website. Pietro's cooked up a lot of special sauce behind the scenes about how he uses AI to do really interesting things with design. The Magicpath is awesome. You can export your design straight to Cursor. You can pull them into Figma and iterate on them further. The things that he's doing, the workflows that he's helping designers unlock is, I would say, unparalleled in the space right now, at least in terms of products that have actually launched to users. Sit back, enjoy the conversation. I promise you, you're gonna learn some stuff. This is Today in Design. Pietro, thanks for joining us, man. You are a man on a mission. Not only do you already have a startup up and running that's doing 6 figures of MRR, you just launched Magicpath, announcing, was it a $6.6 or a $6.9 million raise from Kozla Ventures?
6.6, yeah.
$6.6 million in the bank to build what's effectively the future of AI design tools. I'm excited to chat, man. Here's what I want to do. I want to give people the lay of the land on who Pietro is, because you have one of my favorite stories of designer turned AI tinkerer turned almost like AI coding madman. And now you've launched 2, one successful, one I'm sure is going to be successful AI driven products quite quickly. Let's dive into it, man. Tell us about your background.
Totally. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you. Yeah, dude. I mean, like my story is like kind of interesting because, I start my career actually in engineering, like nuclear engineering. I started a job in Italy, where I'm originally from, and I hated it. I always wanted to be in tech. I remember somebody like handed me an iPhone 4, which at the time I couldn't afford. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And I basically decided to just put all my cards into that, moved to California, started a career in design engineering. I was like one of the first design engineer at OpenTable, basically build the OpenTable that's like loved and known today, like the red and white, the consumer product, the business side of the product. And then after that, I went to Facebook. I lead newsfeed and video feed and ads after. And then I went to Uber, where I was like leading this like team called Uber Elevate, which was like an initiative of Uber, basically sending drones into the sky. And so taking people out of the street and like putting them back into the sky. I went to Brex, and honestly, Brex is like when I start sort of like my journey with AI, because what happened, we were one of the first company, I think, getting access to at the time, the GPT-3 API. So this is before ChatGPT, before all the craziness around LLMs. And we had this API and I had access to it. And over the weekend, I basically built a demo of what a Brex CFO could look like into this AI world. So somebody you could talk to analyze the data, and it would return this like structural graph, which at the time like felt like magic, because I remember I was using just SQL as an output, which things that we didn't even know we could output SQL at the time, but we just did it and it worked. And I built this demo over the weekend, showed it to the co-founders, and they were like, hey, what the heck? Like, this is your thing now, go run the AI team. So build the AI team at Brex, launch Brex AI, which was basically that idea, but turned into a proper product, became pretty successful. And then I was like, You know what? I think I get a good intuition around this AI thing, and I left that job, co-founded my first company, which is EverArt, the one that you were talking about initially. And EverArt, you're correct. Right now, it's like 600,000 MRR. And EverArt is basically the best place, I think, to train image models on your style, product, persona. It's basically text to ads. So it's a really good product to create ads for brands, right?
Sorry, Pietro. Sorry to interrupt. Just to make sure we got this clear. Did you say 600,000 MRR?
Sorry, RRR, sorry.
Okay. I was like, I didn't realize EverArt was that big.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant RRR. I was like thinking about something else and I go, sorry. I was like, that would be insane. But yeah, so we are $600,000 RRR. And the idea with EverArt was really solving this sort of problem, which is personalization AI. When AI really came to the market initially, nobody was really talking about this stuff. Like, it was really fun to use, but I think now you hear a lot of talking about personalization. You're talking about AI with memories. We've seen like OpenAI really investing a lot of time and infrastructure into an AI that knows stuff about you, right? And so I think like that intuition was correct. And then of course, I also sort of like share open source products. Like I built this thing called Cloud Engineer, which went really viral, which is the base of tools like Cloud Code and now OpenAI Codex. So like I feel like I was also very early into the whole like AI in the terminal assistant kind of thing. I'm happy to say I was basically one of the first ones to come up with that idea. The funny thing was like, okay, I was like working at these companies, I was building all this product, and one day I was like, you know what, like I haven't really opened Figma like in like 9 months, like what's going on here? It was really just like kind of like a realization. And I then tweet this now infamous tweet, which was, I don't think there is any reason to use Figma anymore, which went completely banana viral. I remember it became like a word trend on Twitter, and I got like attacked by people that were working at Figma. I got attacked by designers because they felt there was like an attack on design, where I was just talking about, hey, you know what? As a designer has been doing this for a while, if you don't update yourself, you might be left behind it. That was, I remember it was like the end of February this year. And what I did, I follow up a week later with a video of me using Cursor, building UIs and apps. And that also went viral. And then everybody was like, oh my God, like, sorry, you weren't like screwing around. You were talking from experience. And so that baseline, that sort of like, at one point, I basically became this like personal mission to really reestablish what design and just like updating the workflows that I think they're very dated today was sort of like the seed for me to start working on Magicpath, which I launched last week on Tuesday. And it's crazy because the first commit for Magicpath was March 5. And it's been, like 3 months, I guess. And we have a product out, 10,000 active users, and subscription are going crazy. So it's crazy wild ride.
So I want to go back real quick, talking about cloud engineering. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you essentially like work with Anthropic on some of the things that happened to develop?
So basically I worked with Anthropic for 10 months as a contractor, and my goal was basically just like building new experiences. I can't really go into the details like the stuff I was working on, but it was very like, okay, we know the models are really good at X. How do we make them shine? And like one of the things, for example, they released recently was like deep research. I actually helped with that as well. And also worked on the MCP launch. I built like sequential thinking MCP. I built this the Brave search one, the file system one. To me, like what was important when we launched MCP was like, okay, this is a very kind of confusing thing for people. Like the name is also kind of confusing. Like MCP, what is that? And so my goal was like, what are the 3 easy to understand, amazing experience that we can build around that, so that people really understand the power of this? That's always been my sort of like mantra, is like, how do we take a technology that is really complicated, but then kind of like package it in a way that people understand? Right now, the sequential thinking and the file system are like the most used MCP in the world. At least like that's what Klein say in their statistics, which is really fun. And then of course, I also helped with the launch of Cloud Code and like a bunch of other stuff.
So when we say MCP, because this is an interesting thing I want to talk about with you, because you put out a really good video on how to build an MCP. For those that don't know, so MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, which is effectively a way for an LLM to decide how to use an API. So you take an API that says, hey, you have access to read, write these things, cool. And then the LLM's like, oh, I get to make decisions about what gets read and what gets written. That's cool. And so it allows you to do a whole lot more with existing technology. And now obviously we saw that Microsoft has announced that it's getting dropped into Windows at the operating system level, which is really exciting. Anthropic kind of led the charge in all that, right?
Yeah, I think what Anthropic did really well, it's like the best way I explain it, like the good metaphor I think I found, even internally when we were like kind of talking about, you have to imagine MCP like a USB pen, right? Imagine a system where, you have this USB pen with some data, you plug into your computer, and now out of the sudden you have access to files, you have access to some programs, right? In a way, the difference between like a general tool call and an MCP is that it actually transforms cloud in an operating system. So any MCP becomes an app. And the advantage of that is that you create sort of like this unified framework system for all the LLMs to talk the same language, which is why you can use it with Claude, you can use it with Gemini, you can use it with GPT. So they engineered this really good system that turns any LLM basically in an app store. And that's why it's more powerful than a regular tool call, because regular tool call might be different from model to a model. So they really create this really nice sort of like language layer so that all the model kind of speak the same language. And I think that's why this succeeds so well, because it was very easy to adapt. And then of course it's really well written, and Anthropic is great. I like building this stuff. And so they did it well. Yeah.
What I love about your way of tinkering with AI, and right now we see a lot of people that will create AI content. It's like, oh my God, this prompt literally does this. And it's like, guys, this is the most surface level, useless content in the world. And you're over here like, no, hold on, gentlemen. Like, let me show you how to build your own engineering agent. Let me create one of the most popular MCPs in the world, which is sequential thinking. Let me spin up a business doing nearly $1 million a year using, LLMs and image models. And now, of course, Magicpath, you're trying to create what I would say right now is probably the most exciting generative UI design tool on the market. And what I love about Magicpath too is like you literally just get started. Like you sign up, you click the plus button, you tell it what you want, and you get a UI. And I know you're going to show that to us later, but dude, you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're leading by example. And I think you're also at this interesting intersection of having an audience, but I wouldn't say that you're a creator per se. Like I think you're definitely putting your energy into building your products versus like talking about building your products. But then incidentally, you tend to go viral just talking about your experiments, right?
Yeah.
How do you think about that, man? Like, how do you think about like, I want to tinker with this and maybe people will like it, or does that not even cross your mind?
Look, it's super interesting, and it's something that like I think about a lot too. Actually, you will appreciate this. So I have a few friends that are also founders, they're starting AI companies. And of course, after we released Magicpath, the first thing they texted me was like, hey, look, we're about to launch this new product. We would love if you can like amplify it, talk about us, try it out, dog fooding, whatever it is. The thing that I told them all was like, you know what's funny? People tend to think that the launch is the first thing. Like they think like, okay, I'm gonna work for like, 4 or 5 months in this cave and then I'm gonna come up with this product. And if it's good enough, I'm gonna be successful, right? And what I've been telling people is like, for me, launch was like the last thing. Like it was a culmination of years, just like being very like, hey, look, there is this amazing technology. There's this amazing emerging technology that we really don't understand. Even the people that work on it don't understand. Like you see, Anthropic just spent like $50 million on a company that all it does is basically neurosurgeon into the models, right? And so it's like, I'm just telling you how I use it, and I'm just giving you things for free, right? And I think like looking back, the best thing I did was giving people things for free. It basically turned them into not just like somebody that were like, oh, I appreciate this guy giving me stuff for free, but they actually became true fan, right? In a way, it's almost like closer to music that you will imagine other spaces to be. Like I have people that like sign up on Magicpath and their DMs where it's like, I just signed up because I've been following you for a while. I use Cloud Engineer a lot. I use this other thing a lot. I use the GitHub to LLM thing a lot that I built. I give it for free. And it's like, now I just want to quote unquote give back, right? That to me is like the interesting thing for founders to understand. It's like, you just don't launch the product. Like you have to kind of build this credibility and personality around like what are the things that you do well. Separately, I also think like I'm very grateful because I think I got lucky as well. I think I was posting in the right time. I was doing the things in the right time. And then sometimes it's just my creativity. Like I did this thing that was like, I tweet about Pythagoras, like explaining his theorem with Google VO3. And like Sundar, the CEO of Google, retweeted that. It's like this kind of stuff just happens if you put some time, right? Or like you would not believe this, but I have a chat with my friends. where I send a screenshot of my notes app of tweets that I'm gonna do, and I'm saying, I promise this is a banger. Actually, I can show you this. I see if because you're always not gonna believe me because it's so funny. I will text my friends and I'm like, hey, I think this is gonna do really, really well. So a couple of days ago, I tweeted about you're the top 5 people that you speak to, and then I put Gemini, and so this is a text that I sent to my friend, right? So I was like, I don't know if you can see that, but I was like, new banger dropping soon, which is basically a note screenshot, because tweets just come to me in my mind as I walk in, as I'm at the gym, as I talk to my friends. And then this tweet, I think right now is like 6,000 likes. And so it's almost like you start creating like this intuition and this sensibility around like the things that really resonate with people. And basically, yeah.
I remember, I think I saw that right when you tweeted it, and I even replied. And I was thinking at the time of reading that tweet, I was like, God damn, this is a clever tweet. Like, this is going to do numbers.
So funny,
yeah, dude, that's so good. So tell me, man, like you were a nuclear engineer, and then you became a designer, and then now you're back to effectively being an engineer, right? So how are you approaching your engineering work on these products? Are you leading with like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to code? Or are you leading by saying, I'm going to let the model do a lot of the heavy lifting for me, but I'm going to be the director in terms of where we're going because I have that knowledge inherently?
It's a mix, right? There's like a lot of like product sort of like challenges that we need to solve. So actually, like I would say my time is probably split 50-50 between like product design decisions and engineering. We hired an amazing designer at Magicpath. His name is Jacob. He like help us with launch, and he's an incredible visual designer. So like even having him on the team like help a ton, right? Because we moved like way faster than we could move, especially in the last month. There's a lot of things like, for instance, right? Like you build in this like canvas experience. And one of the first issue that we got right away was like, we are basically the first company where you have this infinite canvas, but then every frame is interactable, right? So you can click in, you can use the app, you can use the web app, you can test it out. But then how do you deal with something where you have to drag stuff around like you would expect it to do in Figma, but then if you click, they become interactable? And so you start getting all those problems that nobody has ever solved before, and now you just have to solve it just via sheer of experience or like what feels good, what does not feel good. And so there's like sort of like a product level things you need to solve. And then there's like the model stuff. It's like, okay, how do we make the models that we're using like incredible at design? Mm-hmm. And that is like the thing that took me the most time. Like before launch, like I'm not gonna lie, I think I slept like maybe 2 hours a night. At the end, that time paid off because now sort of like the experience across the board where people are reporting is like the first shots that I get from Magicpath, I'm not able to get it from anybody else because no Bolt, no Lovable, no nothing, because it's like, it's really like taking my years of experience as a designer and distillating into the product, which is the really weird thing too. It's like I feel like as a designer, you know, like it's a very masochist job in a way. Like you're always constantly putting yourself out, yep. Putting yourself out for ridicule, putting yourself out for feedback, putting yourself out for critique, whatever. And this is like me distillated into a product that people are using every day. It's like a really interesting kind of thing that when I was working on, I was like, oh wow, they're actually using myself when they're making these designs. They don't even know, right? And so that's kind of like the wild part. Very complicated product, yeah.
I love hearing you tell the story of creating the product that way. It's interesting that you say it as like, this is myself as a product. Why don't you show us Magicpath? Let's dive into Magicpath. And then I'm going to ask you some pretty specific questions about like how the development process worked, how you thought about prompt engineering. I think that'd be some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Okay, so this is Magicpath. And so basically when you get into Magicpath, you already get into like a very familiar experience, right? My goal with this was like, hey, we know there is certain things that work really well about design tool. So why we need to like take them out, you know, like and change the UI. So now you just have this like chat and preview, right? When we know what works really well, right? In a way, I see Magicpath as sort of like truly the natural progression going from Photoshop to Sketch, from Sketch to Figma to Magicpath. Because each of those things in my mind, they had incremental, right? We went from Photoshop to Sketch because you have SVG and Open Canvas was too good. We went from Sketch to Figma because now you can share stuff on web and you don't have to download the file and it's multiplayer, right? And now what's the next step? Let's use AI to enhance your workflow, not to replace you, right? And so here, basically what I did, like I created like a bunch of stuff, and I'm gonna create new stuff as well. So here I just say, give me an expense track dashboard, truly like from just like, sort of like the predefined example that I have here. But basically, one thing with design is like, design is the art of keeping good decisions, right? So here I have a frame, which I can just like copy paste. And now I have a new frame there that I can just like continue my work on, or I can just like, go work into the previous frame. And the beauty of this is that everything you see is actually code, right? So here I can see all the different elements that are part of that project, or I guess like code base. And recently, as yesterday, we launched the ability, now you can download the code base, or as I was saying before, you can open in cursor. So I can like just copy this terminal, and I can go here, and I'm gonna pass this up right here, and I'm gonna say, okay, this is okay. It's gonna download the project, it's gonna install all the dependency, and now it's gonna ask me like what project I wanna open. I'm gonna say cursor, oh, you're opening my other screen. So right here, boom. We went from design to cursor, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I want this is that, of course, like you can go inside here, I can ask the AI to make some changes. And then on top of that, we also have what I believe the best manual editor of any AI tool. So I can go here now, I can say like, actually, you know what? I want this div to be, red, or I want the font to be Poppins instead of enter, and I want to change this to be whatever, right? So like truly like not only you get sort of like the AI experience to start, but then you can also just like go and edit and then save your edit. You can like, change the color, the padding, anything that you will expect from a design tool, you can do it. But then once you're happy, if you want to add the backend, or if you want to send the work to the engineers, you or yourself can open to cursor, because I'm taking a step back, right? And I think that's why this product resonates so much with people. It's like in a world with Bolt, Lovable, and VidZero, and all those companies are telling you like, oh, you're gonna do the text to app, you're gonna put the backend, Subbase, all this stuff. Why the heck are we forcing designers to learn backend engineering? I think that's just bananas. Designers should have fun, should be able to create stuff, should be able to enjoy, explore, refine, go crazy with it, right? Yeah. And so here, I'm gonna just make like a component from scratch here. So let's say a music player with an album cover, and I'm gonna ask for glassformism, which is like a very popular trend, I guess, right now because of Magic Pro and stuff. And so basically what's happening here, which is very interesting, is if you compare a generation between Magicpath and Bolt, etc., we actually build stuff so much faster. And there's a lot of reason why we do that. One, it's like we have a completely different technology, what anybody's doing. But on top of that, we really wanted to build this for a consumer experience. Like sometimes you have something on Lovable and you're just like staring there for like 10 minutes and you just see like all this code in your face, right? Like same all the other tools like Bolt and VidZero, etc. We don't do that. We take a completely different approach. The AI goes into design. Of course, like, I can just like ask here, I can ask more things, so you don't have to wait. Like if you're working on something, you want to try stuff out, you don't have to wait, right? You can just go and create all the stuff. And the other different thing that we do that nobody does, we actually build the project for you. And when I mean build, it means like in the React way of the word, right? So here you build this beautiful, it's very glassformist, right? And I can just, and everything works. So I asked for this player.
This is what's crazy to me. And I want to jump into this real quick because, when we look at this kind of dashboard above, it feels very Tailwind, very Shadsian, right? I mean, I kind of expect that. But then when you generate this little music player with the album cover spinning and everything like that, the AI is making a lot of design decisions right there. It's like, okay, I'll use glassformism, but also I'm going to do the artwork and it's going to spin and I'm going to add this gradient with the drop shadow. Like there's a lot going on there. And I imagine, and you and I have kind of talked about this before, but that's got to be kind of the secret sauce is like how you're getting it to make those decisions.
Exactly. That's like, even like the sign in here, you put like, or continue with, or, like the password, it's everything. It's like actually like it understands, like what a sign in should be like. It's not just like the way it looks like. Because I think like a lot of the things that people think design is just the way it looks, but no, it's actually the way it works, right? And so now here I could go and I can say like, oh, add a playlist view. You could either like edit with AI directly, like it's doing right now, or once again, I could go here and edit manually, or we even have like selection edit with AI. So let's say if I want to change just this button with AI, I can just do that. I can say like, oh, I don't know, make this button like gradient color, whatever, and then click generate, and we just like fix just that part, which is pretty sick. And then the other interesting thing, as I was saying before, everything is a website. So once you're happy with what you have and you want to share that with your team, with the person that you work on, you can either just share just the frame as you have it, or you can share the entire project. So we made this also like collaborative experience. So now imagine, and the number of sharing projects are crazy that we're getting, right? And so imagine like now I have 200 apps into this. They're all like my tests, my prototypes, my ideas that I want to test with my team. I just share one project and then it just does it, which is kind of crazy.
Let me ask you this, dude. So every time I've seen you demo Magicpath, to me, you've always had a variety of different screens on the artboard, on the canvas, right? And so I guess my question here, like, let's talk through a little bit more nuanced workflow to where I'm actually designing like a whole product. So let's say I'm going from, I want to do the sign-in screen to the dashboard to settings pages and detail pages, etc. How does Magicpath as a design tool, as I'm generating those new screens, is there a way that it thinks about the context of the design it's already created?
That's sort of like what we're working towards in terms of like functionality. Like for instance, there's certain thing that you can do right now. We have this thing called flows. So if I do a flow here, I can say, oh, give me the screen that comes before and after. And so what that does is actually taking that construction, like it's taking like whatever design you have, and he's studying it and then apply that to like different states, basically. And so that's something that you can do like today. But one of the things we're doing, for example, if you look back at this dashboard, right? So this dashboard right here, there's like different things here, right? There's like a sidebar, there's like the navigation bar and all of that. Right now, what Magicpath does is design so that it understands sort of like your intent. So let's say you ask just for the sidebar, the process would be much faster. So we just give you a sidebar or we just give you a nav bar and all this stuff. And right now you can combine them together. But one of the things we're working on right now is like, let's say I'm working on this like big overall on an app, or I'm working on a big design project. And I say like, oh, you know what? Like I really like the way this sidebar looks. So we're working on right now is this thing called blocks. So I can say like, okay, turn this into a block. And so every time you are referring to a sidebar, or I'm like going to another project and I want to use the sidebar, it will use that sidebar, which is like really cool. So it's almost like the component version of Magicpath, if that makes sense, like what you have in Figma. So here you can see he had, which is, and he still keep the glass look without having to say anything, because he understood like what this is about, right? The way we built it as a first sort of MVP was like, build what you want, right? Do we want to build a certain component? You want to build a full app? You want to build like something more complicated? You can do all of it. And then it's just like really up to you to go and sort of like scope it out. But we're working on this sort of like things like extracting a component from another thing. Another thing that we're working on right now, you will be able to select multiple components at the same time and say like, okay, I want to create something that looks like this, behave like this, is connected to this. And those are honestly like the stuff that are like really complicated right now. It's like stuff that just don't exist. And those are all the stuff that we are like basically like just figure out as we go, if that makes sense.
So how do you think about your roadmap right now? And I don't know how much you're willing to talk about it, but as a user, let me share what I think is interesting, and you tell me if this feels like it's a roadmap. So the components, the blocks, those things make a ton of sense. What I've learned experimenting with AI, especially it generating UI, is that it will tend to lose details. And so I'll have to kind of provide context on like, hey, no, we're using this component library, which I love that you're doing the blocks for that. But I think a lot of the control is that sometimes prompting to get the specificity that I'm looking for out of the UI just doesn't work right. And so I need to hop in, and I need that easy, almost Figma-like control, which you all have started to build. But how do you think about the difference between using the AI to generate the fine details versus letting the user take over and having even more ease of control into the nitty-gritty aspects of the design?
That's a great question. And I love this question because literally next week, you're going to have the answer on that, because we're working on right now a video called Design Systems, right? And so right now, the AI generates stuff based on a certain set that we had defined, right? But you're actually going to be able to kind of go and change those knobs to the liking that you want in terms of margin, padding, color, border color, like all this stuff that you expect from a design system, basically. And then once you start creating stuff, it will always follow that specification, which is really important, right? And then going back to your original questions, like how I think about roadmap and stuff, to me, I never wanted to make a tool with AI just because AI is the hot thing, right? It was never about, oh, let's just put AI into design. That's really not what I care. What I care is like, how do we change the workflows, right? How do we take things that we know works and people are used to, but just make them better, right? And so, for example, you go into a Figma file that has a design system, right? And the design system is like on the right. You will have like the color, the styles, the shadows, all this kind of stuff. But then, unless you already made those pre-made components with whatever variables you have, you kind of have to go layer by layer, like element by element, and apply that style. The beauty of AI is like already knows that. It's like once you specify some rules, it's always going to follow them. And so those are kind of like the stuff that we're working right now, like the ability to generate stuff on the fly that will follow your design system, right? So for example, here, I just say like, oh, make an iOS notes app. And the other thing we do actually, based on the request, the artboard change. So if I ask to generate an iOS app, it makes an artboard this size. If I ask a website, it makes an artboard this size. It changes based on the content. So the container changes based on the content, which I think it's really interesting. But you can imagine if we ship this feature and I'm like, Open Table for some reason decide that from now on they're gonna have a note app, that you can just, that banner will always be red once it gets generated on default. And maybe like the borders, they're not gonna have some stroke that it's like bigger or whatever. Those stuff are all gonna be part of, are you gonna generate components? And we're just like very excited about that because then it turns this into like a very serious design tool.
You talked about changing the workflows. So I want to dive into that.
Yeah.
You and I both spend the majority of our time working with AI to build and design things, right? My workflow these days still heavily relies on Figma because I have a design team. I own a design agency. And so we'll create work in Figma and I'll use the Figma MCP to translate that into obviously, tailwind components, things like that. And I would say, especially now with like Claude 4, it one-shots everything to be pretty much perfect, which is amazing. And so I'm curious for you, like taking the other angle of this where you're saying you don't need Figma, you can generate with AI and then you can control it from here. What do you think the design workflow of the future looks like?
My thing right now, it's like meeting people where they are until we come out and be like, we basically don't need Figma anymore, right? And so an interesting thing about this too, this is sort of where the cursor interaction sort of comes to the market, where it's like, I build the UI, I'm happy with what I'm building, and now I want to sort of like, add the backend, whatever. So we completely undercut Figma there, right? And this is really interesting, where things gets interesting. Because AI is so, it's not a perfect thing. It's not deterministic, right? So today I posted this video that I was like, I asked Magicpath, imagine what a UI inspired by iOS 19 could look like. Of course, doesn't know what iOS 19 is, but he made this beautiful like dock here. And I was like, holy shit, this is actually insane. Like
that's a decent little dock.
Right? But
yeah, I like the little jiggle.
Right? The jiggle, the shadow, the gradient, everything is like responsive, right? Like the side, like the search bar, it's like so pretty, it's like so glassy, right? And so the thing is like sometimes you do get stuff that 90% of people are gonna be happy with it. And so at that point, I edit with Magicpath, move it to cursor, I'm done, right? Yeah. And sometimes you wanna get that extra flavor, which is like, either our better editor as we get that better, or for now, the sort of like, Figma integration that we're gonna do. And anything you do basically gets converted perfectly for Figma.
What's so cool about this to me is because I personally don't think that, I love Bolt. I'm a big fan of Bolt. Obviously they sponsor release notes too. And so big believer there. It's not even about the tool. It's just about the implementation of the LLM. I don't think they generate good UI, right? Yeah. I think Magicpath does generate pretty interesting UI, and I've played around with it a lot. And with some careful prompting, you're going to get to some interesting stuff. When I think about using Magicpath, so for example, we're building something called Service OS right now, which is think of it as like a very opinionated niche Atlassian. So it's a suite of services, of tools for service businesses. So we use it to run our agency off menu, and we're doing some really interesting stuff there. And so we'll sit down and we'll have a design session in Figma, and my head of design will go away and create some beautiful screens, whatever. And then I'll be building something and I'll be like, oh wait, we're gonna need a new experience for this. What's interesting there is I can say, oh, let me go into Magicpath. Let me tell it like, hey, here's our designs. I need a new screen that does this. Here's what I'm thinking. It's good enough for me to run with, to scaffold the UI. And then my designer can take it, put it back into Figma, and then get the perfect design that we're after for us to then clean it up. And that's a really powerful workflow change today.
You actually nailed it. Because like to me, like, and not because this is my company, but like I see Magicpath as the tool to start your Gen UI journey, right? It's like we lost the ability of ideate with AI. We lost the ability of creative output. We lost the ability of trying different ideas because we're so set into this like utilitarian code preview kind of view. But this allows you to basically do what you're saying, which is like, it's great for the first pass. I explore, and then I either send it to Cursor if I'm happy, or I give it to my designer via Figma, right? And you can just like refine it. And to that point, I also think we have the best implementation when it comes to like image to design. So I want to show you, I'm going to take this UI right here. It's like a hero for like a writing app. So I'm going to say, just make this. And I promise you, you ask anybody, we nailed this. Because what I'm doing in the back here, it's so crazy. I'm going to give the audience a tip. A while ago, I tweeted about this thing around using Gemini to just understand images. And so there's a lot of interesting details there. If I want to give like a little hint.
Dude, let me do this. Let's play a game. Let me guess how I think this probably works behind the scenes.
Okay, I love, and then based on I won't say anything. Experience, my expression, you'll figure out.
Okay. So if I was going to build this, I would have a chosen image model that I would work with to analyze the image. I would probably have some specific prompts in terms of spacing, text, colors, hierarchies of designs. And then I would have it infer all of that from the image and describe it all, breaking it all down. And then I would have the implementation UI looking at the image as well, looking at all the descriptions that I'd created, and it would have its own set of rules about how design should be implemented. Are we somewhere in the ballpark of how it works?
You're very close.
Okay.
You're like 80% close.
Okay.
There's one part that you're missing. I think it's very important.
I'm gonna hold you to this. You're gonna have to text me and tell me what it is because I'm so curious. Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, that's just insane, right? Down to the feather icon, down to the pill here, the trusted by. You really remade a little UI. I mean,
the feather icon is crazy because typically people are going to pull from Lucide. I assume that's not a Lucide React icon.
No, actually, I don't know. Well, I don't know which one. It might be. It really depends.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. How do you make it use icons that are not boring all the time? That's another thing that we have to solve. But I think this might be. Oh, SVG, he actually drew that. That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
He drew that icon.
That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, that's insane. That's actually insane. I'm actually shocked.
And this is 3 months of development.
3 months.
And up to this point, it's been 2 people working on this?
3 people. Well,
3 people.
We were 2 for 2 months.
Yeah.
I hired after my raise, my founding, I hired more people, but we were 2 for basically the majority of the time.
So what's next? Like, what do you think the next 3 months of development looks like? Where do you want to be in 3 months?
Yeah, so basically really nailing down this like the workflow stuff we were talking before, like the components, things. We're gonna allow you to add more element into the canvas. Right now it's just website, but you can also imagine we're gonna have you doing like images and like a bunch of other stuff to truly like make things like even more creative. Like I want to have a mood board of image I want to get inspired, and then kind of like use that as a reference. So you can imagine that kind of flows, and then really nailing down on the concept of like the design components. And then there's also an element of like, okay, this is going to be really good for the 0 to 1, right? Mm-hmm. How do we go now from the 1 to 100, which is like, I'm an established company. I am Ramp. I am Apple. I have all this set of codes already built. How do I import that into Magicpath and then basically just create this like ultimate handoff between designers and engineers, where designers are going to be able to change the design and actually impacting what's the code is in production without even know. That's my dream, right? Where designers can just say like, oh, you know how many times I would sweat, I'd be at home and just being so upset because I was working at Facebook and like there was like this button that was like 5 pixels off, and I was like, why the heck? Like, and I wouldn't even understand how that happened after I spec this whole thing out and I had all the border and the margin, right? And to me, to just be able to come to an app like this, right, and just change the margin correctly and then push it, and it's like production, oh my God, right? Yeah. So that's sort of like the vision. There is a lot of work along the way, but I'm very focused. The team is super excited, especially when you see like the reaction that people are having, like thousands of subscribers that we have. And I think the team is like very galvanized because like, I'm not gonna lie, like up until launch, I was like so stressed out. I felt like because I was so early on this stuff and I was so vocal about it, I kind of built my competition as I was building this product too. You know what I mean? I felt like once I start talking about design AI, now all of a sudden, everybody cares about design AI. You know, actually what's crazy? You look at my tweet about Figma being, you know, not relevant, whatever. And that was like end of February. They just did their config. And in their config, they're talking about how all this AI feature, which I think they felt very underbaked. They didn't really feel like Figma spent a lot of time on it. And then once the product manager goes on stage to talk about it, she introduces herself and she says, I only been at Figma just for a month. And we launched this AI feature, which really coincides with like basically them just waking up and be like, holy shit, like this guy or people that think like this guy, they might be right, like the world might be changing. We have to start working on AI feature. Sometimes I think about, I wonder if I never tweet that, if Figma would even done the AI stuff. I actually do think about it because it's like that tweet, so like it was like 5 million people saw that tweet. Like that's too much to ignore, right? Yeah. Or like you see like company like Variant now, it's like it's another one that just came to the market. They were doing something completely different. They were doing Pinterest like. I start talking about Magicpath, teasing the UI. Now all of a sudden, they also want to do AI design, which I love because I think like the more competition you have, it's just a better space to grow and customers also have a better experience. But yeah, there was just like a lot of anxiety going to the launch, basically.
Dude, I can imagine. I can imagine the anxiety too. So I want to back up for a second though. So we have the demo of Magicpath here. I'm super excited for people to really see more of what you built. But let's talk about how you built it. Because that's one of the biggest things I want to focus on as we tell these stories is how did you sit down and actually go from, oh shit, I said Figma's dead. Now let me like back it up, right? Yeah. Like let me put my money where my mouth is. What was the first proof of concept like? How did you build it? Was it opening cursor and prompting? Like talk me through your process.
Yeah, so one thing I always suggest people when they start to think about any AI flow and pipelines is starting with Python. The reason why I love Python and Python is so great is that one, basically every API it's built to support it fully, and the building blocks of Python is just very easy to understand compared to something like TypeScript. So Python allows you to basically just focus on truly sort of like the in-out of the model, right? And then how you pipeline the in-out of the model. And I basically kind of built a very rudimental version of the Magicpath pipeline in Python to be like, wait, does this even make sense? When you ask Magicpath for a music player, there's so much stuff that happens in the back to actually make that music player the way you see it. First, it was really just like validating if I was crazy or not. It's like, and honestly, I think like working on Anthropic was kind of like a wake up call for me, because when you work on Anthropic, you get to play with earlier version of the models that they get released.
Right.
And as I was playing with the earlier version of, I guess at the time, Cloud 4 and 3.7 before that, I was like, wait, like those models are actually really good at design. Like what's going on? And like you could really feel the tangible jump going from 3.5 to 3.7 when it came to like design, like and not only just the visual side of things, but kind of what you were talking before. It's like he understood that I need this way, this animation, this experience, right? That's basically it. You kind of have to go talk to the model a lot, understand what the models are good for. When I was raising money from Magicpath, I also got a full-time offer for Anthropic during the same week. And I remember I was just like, it was just so crazy, right? Sometimes you decide to go to different jobs. Like your life might not change a lot. But this was truly like, there's an alternative unit where Pietro went and lead this team on Anthropic that were basically built around me. And I become famous for that. Or there is a world where I built the company of my dream, I grow it to whatever, I changed the workflow. And I think the reason why I ended up doing that is because I just saw it. I just saw the light of like, you know, how good the models are at design. And I just didn't want to this way, because I feel like when I first started working on Cloud Engineer, at the time, you know, we were working on EverArt. And me and my two co-founders, I was like, guys, like, trust me, we have to like start working on coding agent, because I think this is going to be the next big thing. And we kind of disagree on it. You know, my engineer didn't really believe at the time, he didn't really believe in AI as a coding thing, which kind of makes sense considering his background. And we never really agreed on doing this. And then Cursor came to the market, fastest $100 million company ever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I need to get into this vibe coding space one way or another. And I'm glad that I got into the something that feels a little more special and different than other people are doing.
Yeah, it feels really akin to you and your background. It's a funny thing, speaking of Anthropic, because, I tell this to my team all the time. I'm like, look, when 3.5 Sonnet came out, and Cursor was really like hitting the scene in a big way, it's like, oh wow, like we could build a lot of the ideas that we've had without a huge investment. We should do that. But you don't really take action as much as you wanted to, because you still run into a lot of the hallucinations, a lot of the issues. And then 3.7 comes out and you're like, oh man, it's gotten 15, 20% better. Like now we've really got to do it. But then it was 4. When Opus 4 and Sonnet 4 came out and you're hitting 80% on the SWE benchmark and all the other tests and things, and you started playing with it and one-shotting crazy complicated stuff. Like we one-shot a whole Stripe app to import all this stuff and populate data, whatever, which historically would be a nightmare, right? God. It was like, if we don't start shipping the things that are literally like causing us to lose sleep at night, if we don't start shipping them right now with these models, we're going to regret it for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
Like this is the time today to take action and build things with these models, or you're just going to be left in the dust. And we're not even going to get into like post-labor economics and what's going to happen over the next few years for entry-level white-collar workers. But man, like it's one of the most exciting times in technology, if not obviously the most exciting. It has its scary elements. So it's kind of like seize it now. So I love that you guys pivoted and jumped right into this, and you're building what to me feels to be one of the most relevant tools in the space.
Thank you. I mean, coming from you, like the first time we talked, always a big fan of your work. Maybe you saying that makes me really happy. Actually, what's funny? When I was raising money, I had a slide where I want to show you this, that as an employee, I had Claude. It was truly the third employee in the company. So this was the slide. It was like me, my co-founder, Jack, and Claude. Like, that was the original team. I'm not even joking. And that's, I think, also why we were able to move so fast. At the time, it used to be called Easel. It's so true how those things are really changing like people's life. It's super important to take advantage of the stuff because it might not come back.
I love that your pitch deck is not even like overly designed. It's just like, let's get to the facts and talk about the vision.
I want to show you one last thing about pitch deck.
Yeah.
This is my opening slide. Because that's kind of how I felt. It's just, what you want to build today? What you want to build today? And I'm like, if I'm a designer, I'm just like screwed. Like I want to think like a designer. I want to embrace the exponential of AI without having to like learn the sub-base.
Yeah.
I think like that's what really kind of resonates. I think this is an advice I want to give to future founder. Like sometimes like don't lean into something because you think that's like the Kool-Aid. And sometimes you're taking a step back is actually the right mentality, right? Because like that's what I did. I kind of take a step back and I was like, hey, look, like it's not about the text to app, but it's about how do we take what designers are really good at and just give it a Ferrari instead of the Fiat 500 that have been driving for the past 10 years.
I love it, man. This has been a great conversation. I can't thank you enough for coming and showing us Magicpath and talking through it, dude. I'm excited to see where you go.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much.